When I decided to make a point of playing more Pokemon spin-offs, a few of you were very vocal that I should try Pokémon Ranger. Specifically, Shadows of Almi. I was told that was the best one in the series to start with, because it's not quite as clunky as the first one, and if you like it, you still have Guardian Signs to play after. I think the biggest selling point, the reason a few of you were vocal about me giving it a try, is the way that Ranger implements field moves. I have talked a fair bit about what I like and dislike about the various implementations of field moves throughout the main series, so I was definitely interested. I had a bit of a rough start with the game though. I wanted to record my playthrough for the Canale video library, but no matter what I did, I couldn't get the game to look right. I was playing on an emulator because I don't have a DS with a capture card, and so emulation was the only way to stream and record it. But the emulation had graphic problems. The overworld was broken up by these lines all the time, and I couldn't get rid of them no matter what settings I changed to try to fix it. Trust me, I spent over a week on this. In the end, I gave up recording. If I don't show a lot of footage today, you'll know why. But thankfully, the glitches didn't affect the actual gameplay, and so I pressed on. Maybe I was just frustrated that I had to start playing the game a week later than I originally planned to, and putting up with all of the graphic glitches, but I felt like it had a slow start. The section at the school is fairly long, but I appreciated the way that you slowly get a bigger role. First, you're a student at the Ranger School, learning the basics and getting a little bit of experience. Then you get your job at the Vientown Ranger Base, where you start to do more real-world ranger work. And eventually you move up to the Ranger Union, you become a top ranger, and you get major missions throughout the region. It's a really good progression. Each time you move on to the next stage, you realize how much bigger the game is than what you thought. It's kind of like when you step off the Great Plateau for the first time in Breath of the Wild. Very different scale, similar feeling. The gameplay has two main features. Field moves, or using the Pokemon that you befriend to clear away obstacles or help you move around the region, and circles. A lot of circles. If you're curious, I used my drawing tablet as my DS touchscreen and pen emulator. It worked pretty well. But man, the combat gameplay is dull. All you do is draw circles, and sure, sometimes you have to be a little bit more strategic about how you draw circles, and I will also grant that I often forgot that I could use Poke Assists, which do make the combat a little bit more varied and effective. But still, you start the game drawing circles, and you finish the game drawing circles. There were certainly some battles that were more engaging than most, but at least for me, combat was not very interesting. I'm not sure if I should really be calling them battles, since you're not actually trying to defeat the Pokemon as much as just calm them down and befriend them, but I guess sometimes you do actually attack them with Poke Assists. Thankfully, there were field moves, and those were done very well. Most Pokemon have a field move that they can use, like breaking a rock or putting out a fire. Some of them you can ride on, but not ride on. But the big difference between Ranger and main series field moves is that in Ranger, they are single use. In the main series, if you teach one of your Pokemon an HM move, you can use it as many times as you want. Your one Farfetch'd with Cut can cut every bush in the region, and I guess technically every piece of grass too. But in Ranger, you don't actually catch any Pokemon. You befriend them and they follow you around willingly, but they will only grant you one favor before they head off and go back to living their wild lives. Whether you use it for a Poke Assist in battle, or you take a ride on them, or you use them to clear away an obstacle, after they do any one thing, they're out of there. Partner Pokemon are an exception. Those stay with you forever, but they also don't have field moves. You can only use them for Poke Assists. In any case, single-use Pokemon have a really interesting implication on the level design in Ranger and the distribution of Pokemon. Say you have to cross a river of magma in the volcano. Torkoal is the only Pokemon that you can ride on in magma, and so you need to be able to access our Torkoal on both sides of the river, otherwise you'll be trapped forever. If you're in an area that requires a lot of cutting, you need to have a lot of Pokemon that can cut around. If the area has a lot of dark rooms, you need Electabuzz around so they can use Flash. And so there's this really neat balance and synergy between what the area has to offer in terms of available Pokemon and what you need to get through it. It's not always that simple. Sometimes there's a really big boulder or something blocking a path, and you need like a level 4 crush to get rid of it, but there are no level 4 crush monsters around, so you need to go get one from somewhere else and bring them to your boulder. But I think every time that happens, what's behind the big boulder or whatever is optional. It might be a very powerful Pokemon or just a very rare one, but it's not something that is required to progress. What you need to complete your mission in an area, that area will provide. It's also really nice seeing this huge entourage of Pokemon following you around, and also a little bit funny to think about, like when you need to get airlifted by a little Drifloon and your entire party is hanging on. Single-use Pokemon also had another important effect. As soon as I found an Umbreon, it took up a slot in my party that I couldn't use for anything, because I knew as soon as I used it for anything, it would leave me, and I just couldn't handle that. Now, as much as I like the field move system in Ranger, I don't think it can translate very well to the main series. You wouldn't want your own Pokemon to have single-use field moves. That would just be kind of weird. And I think if you had to rely on befriending individual wild Pokemon to clear away obstacles on top of catching and raising your own party, that would be even more awkward. But I love that philosophy that the land will provide, that like when the time comes that you will need a certain field move, you will be able to find a Pokemon that has one. And that's how, from a game design perspective, you control progression through the story and access to new areas. And in fact, I just played a game that does exactly that. In Monster Sanctuary, every monster has a different field move, and when you get access to new areas is exclusively restricted by which monsters, and therefore which field moves, are available. And you can use the field moves of any monster you have, even if they're not in your active party. It's pretty much exactly the approach to field moves that I would like to see in the main series. It's also just a great game overall. Highly recommend that you check it out. But back to Pokémon Ranger. There is something that I think the main series can and should take from it. It's actually the writing. The plot as a whole is fine, but it's not exactly the most unique. A big energy company wants to essentially harvest infinity energy to make a ton of money at the expense of everyone else. Sounds familiar. But the dialogue, the characters, and even just the names of things are really good. Like, the big bad energy company is very cheekily called Altru Inc., and of course, they pass themselves off as good guys for most of the game. The mafia, proper evil team side of the Enterprise is called Team Dim Sun, and that does have a nice dark theme to it, very appropriate, but there's also a quest about them being hungry for some dim sum. The dialogue is maybe a little bit long-winded at times, but it's witty, it's sarcastic, even a little absurd at times, and overall just really fun. I guess the game just doesn't take itself too seriously, and so the writers were able to have some fun with that. For example, you have little Timmy, the milkman, who is deathly afraid of Pokemon. When you need to carry a Gigarimo unit back to base and it's too big and heavy for even Barlow to handle, you call on the strongest person in town, Big Bertha. There's a guy who's making perfume, and so he asks you for assistance in collecting the exquisite fragrances of Muck, Wheezing, and Skuntank. When some dim sum grunts fail to catch a Wailord, they catch a Wailmer instead and try to convince their boss that it's a Wailord Mini. Man, I really want some dim sum now. The main series does tend to be more serious. You get the Shadow Triad, which is cool and edgy, both in name and appearance. Whereas in Ranger, you have the Sinistria, where every character is unique and colorful, literally and figuratively, and with a fantastic group name. I don't want every main series game to go the Ranger route with its characters and dialogue, but I do think it would benefit from letting the writers have some fun and create some scenarios that are a little bit more lighthearted and silly, or at least varying the overall approach more. I haven't yet given a chance to more Ranger games, and I don't think that I will. I did enjoy Shadows of Almia, but I just can't look forward to more Circles. But I would love to see a new Ranger game, or at least a spiritual successor. The premise of Ranger as a series is really awesome, and I would love to see it come back, ideally with a different battle style. If you've played any Pokemon Ranger game, let me know what you thought of it in the comments, and what you would like to see in a revival for the series. Thank you for watching. I appreciate all of you very much, but I do have to make a special thank you to those of you who support me through Patreon and YouTube channel memberships, like Luxury Patron Ethan from Chicago, and our newest channel member, Zachary. I'll see you all in the next chapter. For those of you who are curious, yes, I did take and pass my Canadian citizenship test, but I still have many months to wait before the results are official and my application is done processing.